Hello and welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Alfonso Peluso and I'm a Studio Associate Professor in the College of Architecture at IIT, the home of the legendary Mies van der Rohe, and I'm adjunct faculty at Columbia College Chicago in the Interior Architecture program. Shout out to all my students. I hope you're doing great. We are getting ready to start a new school year. That's right, fall of 2021 is upon us. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, but we are making the best out of this school year, and I can't wait to get started. All right, today we're going to be looking at using a CNC for engraving. So what is engraving? Let's say that you wanted to label something you were CNCing a part. You wanted to label it AB1, let's say. Or you wanted to write your name like I have done in this, and I've written my last name out there, Peluso. So what is engraving? If I simulate this, you'll see the tool as a pointed engraving tool, and it's using the center lines of the geometry that's there, which is just text for right now, and it went ahead and wrote my name in a piece of stock, whatever that stock may be. In this case, we're going to be looking at using wood. All right, before we get started with that, let's look at my YouTube page. All right, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and click on the subscribe button. What are you waiting for? I have so much here, so many different tutorials using so much software, and I plan to make a lot more this school year. All right, so we'll go ahead and click on subscribe and click on the little bell to receive all the notifications. Recently made it to 9,000 subscribers, so pretty happy about that. Also connect with me on Instagram. I'm growing my Instagram channel. See what I was up to this past summer. My family and I, we took a road trip to New York, so that was pretty cool. I taught some summer school courses, so I have some of that up there as well. All right, connect with me on Instagram at my first name Alfonso _ my last name Peluso. All right, let's jump into this tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new file, and I'm going to use small objects inches. There you are, small objects inches. Okay, I'm going to go to my perspective view, and I'm going to set up my grid here so that each one of these grid lines is 1 inch apart, and I only need 12 of them because I'm going to work at a stock size that's 12 by 6. So I'm going to type in DOC, enter, go over to grid, change my grid lines to 12, minor grid lines every 1 inch, major grid lines I could say every 6 inches. My major grid lines aren't showing up. I have a new computer, I have a new Dell here. I'm pretty happy with the computer, but one thing is that my major grid lines are not showing up. Something with the graphics card, I'm sure. I'll have to figure that out. All right, so I'll just set my major lines to 6, and I'll set my snap spacing to 1. Okay, so here I have a 12 by 12 area that I'm working in, and I'll go ahead and change layer 1. I'm going to call this layer stock. Okay, and I'm just going to draw the stock. So what is the stock? The stock is what you're cutting into. If it's a piece of wood or a piece of foam or aluminum, whatever it is that you're milling into, we're going to call that the stock. So I'm going to go ahead and type in rectangle, and I am going to turn my grid snap on, snapping to 0, 0, 0, and this is going to be 12 by 6. I'm going to type that in just in case I did something wrong with the grid. So this is going to be 12, 6. Okay, that put that right there. All right, I'm also going to use the height of the stock. In this case, it's going to be a 1/2 inch stock. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to choose copy, and I'm going to choose vertical equal yes. And I'm just going to pick any point and copy this down -0.5. Okay, and now I'm just going to double check my measurements. Okay, so I'm going to type in distance, See if this is 0.5 inches between here. Yep, 0.5. Measure the length of this is 12, and the depth of that is 6. Okay, so this we'll see in a little bit. This is going to tell Rhino how to set up my stock size automatically because it only can see the boundings of this geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on stock. Okay, so before I do that, I want to just go through some of these settings for those of you that are new to RhinoCam. So if I was to close RhinoCam, okay, now there's no RhinoCam open. To open up RhinoCam, if it doesn't open up automatically, I'm going to go to RhinoCam and I'm going to choose Mill. Mill is using a CNC router. Turn is using a CNC mill and a CNC lathe. And then we have other options here, but I'm gonna use CNC mill. Okay. Now here's my 3-axis machine, so that's good. That's what I'm using, a 3-axis machine. My post processor. This is what speaks to the CNC mill. So this is different for everyone. It depends on what CNC you plan on using. So know your post processor. Find out what post processing language your CNC uses, and I'm sure if you double click on this, you can find it from this list. So I'm setting this up for a video over at IIT where we're using a shop saber. So we have a shop saber here, and we're going to use Win CNC ATC. That's the one we're going to be using. That's for automatic tool changer is what the ATC stands for. And not to leave out my Columbia students over at Columbia, they have a Laguna SS ATC BR. Okay, so let's set this up here for Shop Saber Win CNC ATC. Okay, so that's my post processor now that's set up. Now my stock, I'm just going to double click on it and it automatically finds my stock. You see that little beige box that it makes there. So that's 12 by 6 by a ½ inch. So that's perfect. That's our stock. Okay. So now we need to draw our text in it. Whatever the text is that we're engraving or whatever we're engraving. So I'm going to make a layer. Just going to rename layer 2. I'm going to call this engraving. And I'm going to use my text command. And I'm going to type in my name, my last name, Peluso. I'm just using all caps. So I'm using an Arial font. So you can use different fonts as long as when you explode them, they become lines. And we'll look at that in a second. So I'll go ahead and put that here. And it looks like I can scale this up. So let me go ahead and scale. I'm going to turn off my snaps now. Let's turn off my grid snap. Turn off my O snap. Just going to scale that up. Okay, and I'll do a better job positioning that in a little bit. I'm going to be cutting this out using profiling, and I'm going to show that in another video. So I would have this thing centered in my profiling, but for right now, just want to stick to engraving. Okay, let me just get that. I'm just using my grid to center that. That looks pretty darn good. All right, so now, right now, these are not lines. These are solid hatch fills. So I want to turn those into lines. And to turn it into lines, I need to explode this. So I'm going to go ahead and explode it. And now I have single line geometry. Okay, so that is set up for us there. Okay, so under setup 1, I'm going to go ahead and choose my machining operation, which is a 2D machining operation called engraving. So I'm going to go to my down arrow for machining operation. I'm going to go to 2-axis, and I'm going to choose engraving. Okay, so we're going to go through all these tabs here. So the first tab is we have to tell RhinoCam what we are engraving. So I'm going to go ahead and choose select curve edge regions, and I'm just going to right click on the layer engraving and choose select objects, enter. Okay, so those are all my letters of my name there. Okay, so that's the geometry. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on tool. Okay, the tool that I'm going to use. So I'm going to go to edit, create, select tool, and I'm going to choose what's called a V-mill. Okay, so you see that it has a V at the bottom of it that's used for engraving, and the diameter of this is going to be 1/4 inch. So you have to just know what tools or end mills, we'll call them. You have to know what end mills that your particular school or CNC machine is using, and just need to know the diameter. I'd say the diameter is what you would need to know, and also thinking about the length of it. So the tool length, I'm going to make this 1.5 for 1.5 inches. Okay, so this has a shank diameter and a tool diameter. I'm going to make those both 0.25. Okay. Alright, so that looks decent. Just a 1/4 inch diameter by 1.5 inch length. Okay, and now I can click. I either have to click as save as new tool, or I click on OK. Let's see which one. Yeah, I needed to click on save as new tool. Okay, so that's good to see. So let's try that again. So 0.25, 0.25, tool length 1.5. Okay, save as new tool. Valid tool definition. What doesn't it like? If I put this back to 0.5, that's all I changed. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, so let's click on save here. Okay. Let's try it again. Just going to leave it the way it is. I'm going to click on save as new tool. Click OK. Why aren't you showing up? Okay, now I got it to show up. Alright, so that was a little tricky, and I'm not sure exactly what I did to steer you in the right direction, but if you have some issues like I did, don't freak out. Okay, so I left it at what it was set to. So can I change it? So I'm going to select it and try to change it now. 0.25, and okay, that changed that automatically, which makes sense. Make this 1.5. Okay. Alright, so now it's letting me edit that. Okay, so maybe making the new tool and then editing the new tool is the way to go, and we'll see that in a later video when we do profiling. Okay, something else I want to look at is the tool number. So if I click on it and go to edit, create, select tool, the tool number is important. So for instance, at IIT and at Columbia, we have these CNCs that have automatic tool changers in it. So you have to figure out or find out what tool number has the engraving tool in it. Okay, so I can decide what that is and then just make sure over at CNC that's what it is. When we were working on it over on Friday, we were using tool number 2. So I'm going to use tool number 2, not flutes, but tool number 2. Okay, click OK for that. All right, so we're just going to go through the list. So that was control geometry. Now we have tool. Next we have feeds and speeds. So this is speed and feed, I like to call it, because speed is how fast is the spindle spinning, and I can say that's at 16,000 RPMs. That's what's recommended for half-inch wood that we're milling into. And then for my plunge, approach, and engage. So these are the speeds. How fast is the machine moving? How fast is it going to plunge into the material? How fast is it going to approach it and then engage the material? I shouldn't say plunge into it. Plunge down. Like you see this thing plunging down and engaging and then cutting. That's what this little diagram is. So how fast is it plunge? I can make that plunge at 100. I can approach the material at 100. These are inches per minute. I can engage it at 100 inches per minute. Okay, now when you look at recommendations for plunge, approach, and engage, they're usually a little bit different, but I'm keeping mine all the same for simplicity. Now I'm about to cut and then retract and then leave the material, and I can do this faster. I can cut at 200 inches per minute, I can retract at 200, and I can depart at 200. So I'm just keeping it simple. 100 for my approaching and 200 for my cutting and then leaving the material. Okay, so I don't have to do anything else here. That's all set. Just making sure, one thing you want to make sure is make sure your RPMs are not 16. That's a good way to break an end mill. You want to make sure it's 16,000. Okay, clearance plane. We're going to use the default here, which is stock max plus a distance of 1/4 inch. And what this means is when the end mill is moving around, okay, like when it writes the letter P and it transfers over to write the letter E, it's going to move at a height 1/4 inch above the stock, 1/4 inch above 0. Okay, so that's the default. So we can stick with that for now. We can get a little fancy with some of this other stuff in some of my later videos when we're talking about other machining processes. Okay, for the cut transfer method, we're just going to use that same clearance plane. Okay. Alright, which is using the stock max plus the Z distance, so the 1/4 inch. Alright, now I'm going to go over to cut parameters. Okay, so location of cut geometry. It is at the top. It is at the top of the stock. That's what we're engraving, at the top of the stock. But it is helpful to go ahead and click on pick top, and then that top is 0. Because we're going to set the top of our stock to a Z height of 0. So if we use pick top and we always have that at 0, they're always going to correspond to one another, that 0 Z height. So we're going to leave that. Our total cut depth. We're not going to go very far. We're just going to go 1/8 of an inch in here. Now I saw in the new version of RhinoCam, when I type in 1/8, it gives me the decimal equivalent, which I think is pretty cool, and it'll change it. So that's something new, at least for me. So 1/8, I'm going to go 1/16 of an inch. Okay, so 1/16. So I'm not putting in the inch. So 0.0625. Oops, let me go back in here. Go back in just by double clicking on it. So under cut parameters, I just hit the enter key, so it kicked me out of that. Okay, so total cut depth is going to be 0.0625. Okay. And that's going to set all three, the rough depth and the rough depth cut. There's no finish depth. We'll get into that when we talk about profiling in the next video. Okay, so that's rough depth cut. That's all set to 0.0625. Then we have entry exit. These are going to be none. These are just going to be by default set to none. Advanced cut parameters, we're not doing anything here. We're not setting up a bridge. We'll do that for our profiling. And then sorting, we're not doing anything here for sorting. Now I can hit generate. And I can go ahead and simulate. So one thing that I've done here is I've unchecked the simulate by moves because you might see it go really quickly. Something like that. So I'm unchecking simulate by moves. Then I have it set to the slowest speed. So let me keep simulating. So left is the slowest, right is the fastest. So this is as slow as it can go. Okay, what would you do next? What you would do next is you would right click on your setup and you would choose post. Now I'm in a demo software, so it's not going to allow me to post it. But that's what you would do, and it's going to create a .nc file for .numeric code. So that's going to be the G code that you bring over to the CNC machine, and it reads it and it's going to mill it. Alright, so that's engraving. Hope you found this video helpful. Leave me some comments. If you have trouble setting up a new end mill, let me know. I'm sure others will answer and let you know what I did wrong there. That's what I love about doing these videos and having this community. So give me a thumbs up, give me a like, let me know why you like the video. Subscribe to my channel, and I'll put some links in the upper right to some other videos about CNCing that I made. Alright, I will see you on the next one.